Here we're going live in 3, 2, 1. The webinar is now open to members of the public. And we are ready.
Welcome everyone, welcome back to the Wednesday, November 5th, 2025 meeting of the Police Accountability Board. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL in the agenda packet. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. Joined by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 891-7458-9069. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. We'll do our land acknowledgement. It's been a while. The city of Berkeley recognizes that the community we live in was built on the territory of the Pichun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chinook-speaking Ohlone people, the ancestors and descendants of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to all of the Ohlone tribes and descendants of the Verona Band. To begin our meeting tonight, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of Berkeley, the documented 5,000-year history of a vibrant community at the West Berkeley Sheldon, and the Ohlone people who continue to reside in the East Bay. We recognize that Berkeley's residents have and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this unceded stolen land since the city of Berkeley's incorporation in 1878. As stewards of the land regulating the city of Berkeley, it is not only vital that we recognize the history of this land, but also recognize that the Ohlone people are present members of Berkeley and other East Bay communities today. With that, let's go to agenda item 1, call to order and roll call. Thank you, Chair. For the record, this meeting will call to order at 6:31 p.m. I will now proceed to roll call. Chair Cayetano, here. Vice Chair Wilson, here. Board Member Calavita,
here.
Board Member Lutwich,
Here.
Board Member Wells,
Here.
and Board Member Bozo-Tarco. Board Member Bozo-Tarco did file legal absence ahead of this meeting. So in terms of quorum purposes, it's being held to 8 out of 5 as a result of a leave of absence. So we'll vote to take any action. And then I want to acknowledge the ODK staff in the room, Director Aguilar, Data Analyst Simon Lee, our investigator Daniel Weinberg, and myself as Emilio. On behalf of the DPD, I see that Deputy Chief Tate is joining us online, and Lieutenant Bonaventure is here. So, Chair, with that, we have a floor. Let's go to number 2, approval of the agenda, learning revisions.
I move we approve. I second.
Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, the agenda is approved.
Let's go to item 3, public comment.
Okay, as a reminder for members of the public, the speakers are generally allowed up to 3 minutes, so maybe a lot less time. If there are minute speakers, they may comment on any matter from the board's jurisdiction at the time, except a confidential personnel matter. I will start with those physically present first before moving on to our virtual attendees. With that said, are any of the members who have like to provide public comment? Okay. And just one moment while I get the timer on.
Just as a reminder, we give 3 minutes.
Should I go ahead?
Let's wait until.
Okay. So I have the screen.
Okay, great. I see that. So my name's is it going?
Yes.
Okay, my name's Avi and I'm a Berkeley Cop Watch volunteer. I've attended many meetings here. I know that one of the issues that I believe the board is discussing tonight is related to the flock security systems. There's been a massive controversy around flock in the entire Bay Area, and the public is rapidly realizing that the expansion of these surveillance technologies threatens the life and freedom of immigrant communities in particular because of the frequent data breaches and sharing between flock security and ICE. It also is an affront to the dignity of residents because this kind of undiscriminating surveillance treats all of us like criminals. And it's for that reason exactly that we're saying no to flock and no to the expansion of security cameras in Berkeley, period, on public property by flock or any other vendor. We think that that's an egregious use of public funds. And it's also even from a policing perspective, pretty ignorant because the closure rate of Berkeley Police Department is incredibly low. And the idea that them just finding more suspects is going to resolve that issue is really laughable. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any additional speakers that would like public comments on those of other? Seeing none, I'll move on to our virtual attendees. At this time, if you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon. I'll call you in order that the icon is presented. I'll first start with Abigail. Abigail, you've been granted permission to speak. One moment while I get the timer.
Okay. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Good evening, board members. My name is Abigail Esquivias. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Advocacy at Social Justice Collaborative, and today I'm commenting on behalf of Berkeley Immigration Collaborative. We're 5 Berkeley-based organizations that serve and stand with immigrant communities. BIC actually includes SJC, East Bay Sanctuary, the Multicultural Institute, East Bay Community Law Center, and Oasis Legal Services. When our community learned in October about planned federal immigration enforcement in the Bay Area, we worked really hard to make sure that the people that we serve had the information they needed to be able to keep themselves safe. Collectively, we have earned the trust of Berkeley's immigrant community, and we really don't take that responsibility lightly. In order to properly advise our community, we still have questions about how Berkeley police would respond to immigration enforcement efforts. Our group has worked diligently to advise the city of Berkeley on the recent passage of the sanctuary ordinance, and we are dedicated to doing the same thing with the recent changes in BPD's immigration policy. The revised BPD Policy 415 includes stronger language, but advocates are hoping to gain clarity around specific situations. As such, there are several questions that we would like to put on the record. First, if federal agents conduct enforcement in Berkeley, will BPD provide perimeter or crowd control operations? If so, what actions are officers authorized to take inside of that perimeter? Does that include detaining or restricting the movement of legal observers? What qualifies as other emergency circumstances beyond officer safety? If federal agents are masked and refuse to identify themselves in violation of new state laws, what action will BPD take if they unlawfully trespass or harm Berkeley residents? Federal agencies are increasingly working together in ways that blur lines across enforcement agencies. How will BPD prevent participation in operations that are actually immigration enforcement disguised as criminal investigation under HSI? How often will officers receive instruction and ongoing training on this policy, and how will that training be updated as federal tactics change? Put plainly, how will BPD respond if they are notified that federal agents are breaking California laws? The sanctuary ordinance passed unanimously with strong community support. Berkeley is a city that values immigrants and has earned that trust. The strength of the ordinance lies in how faithfully it's carried out. We recommend that a special meeting be arranged for the public to discuss all policies related to and impacting the immigrant community and hear directly from BPD about their new policies. We're asking for transparency and clarity so we and the community can trust that this commitment isn't just symbolic. Thank you.
Are there any additional virtual attendees that would provide public comment at this time? Chair, seeing no additional hands raised, we can conclude public comment.
Okay, thank you to those who commented. Let's go to agenda item 4, approval of the minutes. First, we'll do the minutes for the regular meeting of September 17, 2025. Are there any observations or comments?
I move the minutes be approved.
Second.
Are there any objections to that motion?
No, let's just do the minutes for the September 17th one first, and we do September 29th and 7th.
Yeah. There were no objections. Okay.
Okay, and then let's do approval of the minutes for a special meeting of September 29th, 2025. Are there any comments on that?
I'm abstaining, I wasn't there.
And we need, Reed, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I move we accept those minutes.
Second?
Let's take a vote.
Yeah. Okay, Vice Chair Wilson, you abstaining, right? Yeah. Okay. Board Member Calvillo,
Yes.
Board Member Lethbridge.
Yes.
Board Member Wells.
Yes.
And Chair Cayetano.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, great. Let's go to ARPA staff report, agenda item 5. Correct.
Thank you, Chair, board members, colleagues, members of the public, and we thank you for returning for this session. Just wanted to give some quick updates on our behalf. There are some things that are in the record, but we won't go too in depth about it, but just want to talk about we have upcoming budget conversations, and one of the things I've tried to do early in my tenure here is establish a partnership with the local universities and colleges for work study programs. Some of them were delayed for different reasons, but this week I had the opportunity to meet with Berkeley College, so we're going to try to establish that partnership. Before, when I arrived, we were in a different position budgetarily, budget-wise, so we would need to go to council for a sustainable program there, but given that the mayor is an alum of Berkeley College and in Cal, we will hopefully get that support and other council members who do believe it's a good program. I myself did work study, so I think it's a good partnership we can develop there. The other items just wanted to mention to the board and the public. We had a presentation before council. We're going to go more in depth about that, but that's on the agenda. That's a recap of the September 30th meeting. And just a gentle recap of a community event we had. It was called a community conversation, Una Charla para la Comunidad. We held that here, on October 10th, partnered with different immigration related and social justice agencies in the community. We didn't have the highest turnout, but we had, I think, a very intimate conversation. We were also joined by Stephen Heilis of the city attorney's office, who gave an overview of the sanctuary ordinance. So that's an opportunity for us to engage with the public and our partners. And the full recap is there. It was authored in part and mostly by our intern, Esther, from UC Cal, who did a lot of the legwork for it. So if you have any questions about that, we're happy to provide you more input. She did have some also good observations about how we can improve about it. One of the things that we noted was that it was an event we didn't have the benefit of being able to do a lot of promotion, which impacted how many members of the community came to it. The other recap I want to provide is the NACO. Every year we go to the Civilian Oversight Conference. This year it's with Minneapolis, very, I think, important location for the civilian oversight police accountability community, given its significance since the George Floyd murder. Our office had also the opportunity to sit in on our moderator panel. I moderated a panel called Knowledge of Power, Using Research to Transform Oversight and Public Safety. It was a panel that consisted of a commissioner from Richmond, local, and also 2 professors, one of public policy, Mir Usman Ali, who did his dissertation on the efficacy of civilian oversight. And Cody Tellup is a professor at Arizona State, and we didn't overlap in coursework, but he was in the criminology program while I was in sociology at George Mason. And he went over a very important tool called the evidence-based policing matrix, which we have also used here at Berkeley at the ODPA when we do literature reviews of different police interventions. But the full memo is in the record regarding NACO. We'll continue to update the body when there's more training opportunities. And we've definitely brought back a lot of materials from that conversation. There was good materials on use of force and auditing and a lot of different topics related to our work. I'll stop there, Chair, if there are any questions, or any updates the board requires at this moment.
Any questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, is there anything else on that direction?
Just a quick opportunity for our staff members who attended, if they wanted to share anything about their experience in Naples. If not, it's fine. Move on.
And just quickly note that in terms of the professional side of the direction, that there is a lot of good material that's presented at these conferences every year. We strongly encourage those who could attend next year to do so. For me, the most important part is always being able to connect with other policy analysts, speak with some of our peers in sort of this brainstorming environment. For me, it's very helpful just to see what other agencies are doing around surveillance technology. Which is a pretty important and relevant topic for our conversations both today and over the last few months and moving forward as well. So that's all I'll say to that.
Okay. Thanks. The vote for you. All right, let's go to item 6, chair and board member reports. Let's start with the board and then I'll go after that. Any updates from the board? It has been a little bit. Yes, please.
Yeah, I just had one thing to raise. So I remember in October getting an email from staff that always includes relevant articles. And one was about AB 847, which is a new law that relates to our work. And I didn't see it mentioned in the packet tonight. And so I just before this meeting, I did some quick research on it. And so basically what the law does effective January 1st. It amends the penal code to authorize civilian oversight bodies to access peace officer personnel records, which until now are confidential. It was sponsored by the LA County Sheriff's Oversight Board, but it does apply both to sheriff's oversights bodies, as well as to any oversight board or commission for a law enforcement agency established pursuant to any duly acted municipal or county ordinance. So I didn't have a chance to look into it too deeply, but it's definitely something that we should explore and possibly invite the LA County Sheriff's Oversight Body, the sponsor, to speak to us about.
And you're saying it was signed by the governor?
And it's effective in January.
Any other board meeting? Or there any other board member updates? No. Okay. Just a few updates on my end. The first is that I have been attending the city council meetings on behalf of, virtually, and I provided public comment at the last city council meeting regarding the encryption item, which is on our agenda today, so we can discuss that further. I would encourage board members to attend if they're interested, and to also provide their perspective, but I'm happy to continue doing so. I've also been meeting with different city stakeholders, including city council members, about our negotiations, our regulations. As the board might know, there was a resolution to urge this board and also other city stakeholders to include our regulations and to finalize them. And I agree with the sentiment that was in that resolution, and I think that our board also agrees that this process should end as soon as possible with so that we can finalize those and also ensure that our complaint process is fair and efficient for all the parties that are involved. I also wanted to say that I attended the NAPLE conference this year, is my second year. And it's really interesting to be able to talk with other accountability boards, civilian oversight boards around the country. There are, I forget how many law enforcement departments in this country. I think it's like 3,000, 4,000. There's many of them, and there are many of them. They have different practices, and the civilian oversight commissions also have different practices and different histories, and it's really interesting to see and talk to them, and yet across all those differences, it seemed like at the conference, there's a general sense that civilian oversight of law enforcement is struggling. We're in a period of struggle right now. The waning period. And so it was really interesting to hear ideas about how they're working within this particular, to find creative ways to push civilian oversight forward in this country. And so I'm excited to share those ideas as this year ends and as the next year progresses. And I also was impressed to see that there were city council members at this, and so I'm going to try to reach out to our council members to see if they would be interested in attending next year. And I think the two most attended talks were on surveillance and on ICE immigration enforcement. And so there were people from a lot of different jurisdictions who are discussing and considering, the same items that we're discussing and considering on our agenda today. So I'm happy to talk more about that when those items come forward. Are there any questions? Okay. Let's go to item 7, the Chief of Police report. I believe Deputy Chief Pate is here. Welcome.
I am. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. First, I want to say I'm sorry that I didn't have an opportunity to go to Nickel this year. It sounds like you guys got some good information out of it. Love to hear some of the takeaways when an opportunity presents itself. Tonight, I'm going to provide several brief updates, beginning with our immigration-related policy work, which is our special order, followed by radio encryption, some legislative updates underway, and some of our policy development items. So getting into it, as many of you know, we had a special order that we put out, I think it was beginning last week, regarding immigration law, which coincides with our policy 415. And we did this because we were faced with the imminent threat of federal immigration activity in the Bay Area. And we felt that it was important to ensure that all of our employees understood the legal boundaries and obligations under state law, city ordinance, and department policy. We didn't want to have any ambiguity or question any questions as the fear was really getting thick in the community. So this order was developed in consultation with the city attorney's office as well as the city manager's office. And for context, the city manager is putting out a citywide training that is mandatory for everyone. So this is our version of that for our staff. And we just want to make sure that everyone is fully aligned. So our training began last week, and we hope to have it completed by the end of this week. It is mandatory for every employee in the department, both sworn and professional staff. And it also serves as a refresher to some of the briefing training that we did back in July, as this conversation has been ongoing. So this ensures that we remain consistent and compliant, and that our folks are prepared to act appropriately in any situation involving federal agencies and honoring our role as in a sanctuary city. I apologize, I'm getting over a cold here. While I appreciate that the board is going to be discussing this item shortly, I'm not going to be able to stay for the discussion. Lieutenant Bonaventure is here and should be able to answer any questions. And for those that he's unable to, he can relay them to us, and I'm happy to get back to you. The chief sent a message to the chair and director this morning that announced that tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., we're going to be transitioning to encrypted and transcribed radio communications. So this change is going to bring us into compliance with California DOJ and federal standards that protect criminal justice, as well as personally identifiable information that's transmitted over the air. Berkeley will now be aligned with every other law enforcement agency in both Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and they all share our regional radio infrastructure. So that shared network provides support for mutual aid, major incident coordination, and officer safety. And while encryption will limit direct scanner access, our commitment to transparency has not changed. This morning, we launched our near real-time public call log. That's available on the BPD Transparency Hub, and that shows incident number, type, general location, and priority level with a brief delay, and that's intended for privacy. The fire department's channel will remain open, and our public information officer will continue, as well as our comm center, to issue Nixle alerts, media releases, and social media updates as quickly as we can. We've also notified our media and community partners so that they understand how to continue accessing timely information. I know one thing that has come up, and I heard it in public comment, with a question about SB 627 and facial coverings. Looking ahead, that Senate bill takes effect in January 1st. As you all know, the law prohibits law enforcement officers from wearing facial coverings while performing duties, except in limited cases such as tactical operations, health-related reasons, or hazardous material exposure. So we're updating, we're looking at our policy to figure out what we need to do to update any of that to be in compliance. And the purpose of the law is rooted in transparency and approachability, and helping the community members clearly see and identify who the officers are. And it's important to note that SB 627 applies only to California police officers. BPD does not have enforcement authority over federal agents who are operating under federal regulations. So I don't know if that sheds any light on it. So that will impact our employees and our staff in our policies, but we will not be able to hold federal agents accountable for that. And then I wanted to address our work with the Arrest Quota Policy Subcommittee. We've been working closely with Board Member Wells and previously with Board Member Edmonds to refine the policy language. And initially, I think as we were coming out of this several months ago, they had recommended a brief sentence that the department shall not establish or enforce implicit or explicit quotas for arrests or citations. So we've had some discussion around whether this language should be a standalone policy or incorporated into our fair and impartial policing policy. A couple things on that. One, our view is that it belongs in our fair and impartial policing policy because quotas can unintentionally lead to biased enforcement or unequal treatment. So for us, when we want to talk about how we expect our employees to treat other people, we feel that in our FIP policy, it is best situated. We also don't have any other policy. I think our shortest policy is about a half a page. So that being said, a one-liner policy is not in alignment with our other policies. So putting the language in FIP, we feel sort of highlights that officers' decisions need to be based in fairness, objective judgment, and community trust, not numbers or performance targets. So the language implicit also in the proposed language could be seen as a subjective standard and could be interpreted to mean informal performance expectations when we're doing performance evaluations, or statistical tracking could be scrutinized. So that being said, our suggestion is that we go with no member of the department shall establish or enforce any quotas for arrest or citations. So this approach preserves the principle of the board that the board supports. I think while also ensuring that it fits within our lexical framework and policy structure. So we are open to having another meeting to discuss that. But anyway, that's sort of an update on where we are there. With that, that's all I have. And I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes for any questions.
You're not going to, I can hear you're getting over something right now, but if you don't mind taking the questions, does the board have any questions for Deputy Chief?
I had a question. Thank you, Deputy Chief Tate. You mentioned the encryption starting tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and the counties that would align with, and what did you say? Which counties was that?
So we're part of ABRCSA, and that's our radio framework, and those ABRCSA covers Alameda County and Contra Costa County. So right now we are the only city in both counties, as far as I know, that are not encrypted.
I think I read somewhere that there was a county, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which county, but one of our neighboring counties that went with encryption and then reversed themselves. Was that not Contra Costa? Where was that? Do you remember? Do you know?
I haven't heard that.
Palo Alto. There was a county fairly recently that reversed that because they found that it had adverse consequences. So anyway, we are going to discuss that this evening. And thank you for your report. On the arrest quota thing, I'm just concerned that it would be in the fair and impartial policing policy because it is broader than that. And it came up in the context of the texting, the bike force texting scandal report, where we recommended such an arrest quota policy. And we provided a 1-page, it was not just a sentence, but it was a full page sample policy. And in the context of the bike force issue, it really didn't have to do with racial discrimination. It had to do with trying to enhance the numbers of arrests that were made to reach 100 at a certain point. And so I guess we'll talk about this with board members, but we did have a sample policy that would be about a page long that would be standalone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question?
No, I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Yeah, please.
I just have a follow-up question on encryption. I think I personally, I don't know about other board members, was surprised to see the department go in this direction. Because as I recall, it was at a meeting, I think in September, where, and I think it was you, Deputy Chief, it may have been the chief, told us about the transition that the county was making, but indicated that the department did not intend to make the transition to encrypted communication. And then the next thing I saw was a consent item on the council agenda to in fact make that transition. So I'm a little confused about what changed and maybe why we were not given a heads up prior to this being put on council's consent agenda.
Sure. So we had been working a series of cases where we were getting information as arrests were being made that the individuals that we were arresting were actually real time scanning our radio channels and created an officer safety issue pretty immediately for us in the event that folks were not just trying to evade, but that they would potentially target officers because they were listening to their response. And so with that, as well as understanding that Alameda and Contra Costa, that there were no other cities, we felt that we would become a target as well, because we would be the only city in the two counties that were unencrypted. So with that, I think we explain the position in the item as to the immediacy and why, but that's sort of an overview.
Right.
I have a few questions, and are there other? No, go ahead. If you don't mind, Deputy Chief Tate. So I heard that explanation when you were when the chief was presenting to council. Were those instances that happened in Berkeley between September 3rd and today? I
don't have the dates, but yes, they were ongoing and they were recent, so it was very timely.
My understanding is that has been a critique of open radio channels since they became open. So the department wasn't aware of any instances of that prior to your investigation that resulted in you deciding to encrypt it recently.
I'm having a difficult time understanding you. So I think I heard you say, were we aware of any cases where individuals were scanning our radios prior to September?
What I'm trying to understand is, it seemed to me that there was an urgency in the item, and I'm just trying to understand what your awareness of the issue was prior to the urgent item that was given to council.
Yeah. It was that our detectives were constantly telling us, and our patrol officers were telling us that they were apprehending people who were scanning our channel.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, thank you. I have a couple other questions about different items. One is, do you know, is there a reason why Chief Lewis couldn't be with us today?
She and I generally rotate, and I think she had another conflicting meeting. We're in the middle of assessment center for promotional process, and we have a lot going on right now.
Right. I had asked her maybe last week and also yesterday about coming to speak during the item on the immigration policy and more presentation format. I didn't hear back from her. Do you know if the department would be opposed, or she would be opposed to doing that if we were to hold a special meeting?
I think it would just come down to timing of it. I mean, you were there for the Sanctuary City Task Force meeting. I don't have a problem. Are you asking for the chief in particular?
Well, I don't know. It could be the chief, it could be someone else, if you're more familiar with the policies, or like if you would be just as equipped to speak to them, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it would just depend on the timing of it.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because we have, this dynamic right now where you're able to stay for your item, and there could be instances where the board wants to hear like full testimony from the department on a specific issue, and I think that our charter gives us the ability to ask you to come to those, and so I just wanted to, to make more formal requests from time to time. I wanted to know if you or the department had any thoughts on whether that would be appropriate.
We can certainly talk about it. Yep.
Great. And then I have a question about the surveillance report that was also put on the action calendar. I sent Chief Lewis, my comments in the item about the ALPR audit that was in the surveillance technology report. And I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read those, but I wanted to give you a chance to respond to them because I had a conversation with Arlo in which I asked him when the department had identified the particular potential breach, and during the course of that conversation, it became clear that it was before BPD had presented to council on the flock item, and so I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
So I think generally what I can say is that by July 22nd, we had only recently learned that some of the search reason text included acronyms associated with federal agencies. We were still sorting out what those entries actually meant and whether or not any rule had been broken. The searches in question came from California law enforcement agencies that already had permission to use the system. And the wording didn't clearly show whether any information had moved beyond those agencies. So we knew that none of our officers had run searches tied to federal entities. But given the uncertainty and given that the council discussion that night was focused on the fixed surveillance cameras rather than ALPRs, we weren't in a position to issue a public warning and needed a clearer picture before speaking about it in open forum.
So, that was in July, and then you presented the report in October, and after those 3 intervening months, the department still reached the conclusion that there wasn't a violation, even though there was specific references to ICE and CBP. And I'm curious to what the reason was behind that, even after we had those 3 months to verify.
So the audit started in late July, and during the work, we had noticed that a few of the search reasons included an acronym used by a federal agency, and that prompted us to tighten up our sharing permissions immediately. Even as the audit continued, we were still sorting out what had actually happened. So the material that we could see was minimal, and we were looking at the brief portions of the search reason text created by, like I said, the California law enforcement agencies. that had access to run the searches and touching our network. So during that, we limited our sharing access immediately and took additional time. It took time to do a full review to determine what action our department needed to take and understand what Flock was doing on its side to reduce any chance of similar issues. So we wanted the final explanation to be accurate, responsible, and suitable for public release.
Are you able to see what the other agencies access, what data was accessed?
So I would have to, that's more of an Arlo question. So I'll have to get with him on that.
Okay, and which department accessed the data and entered in ISO CDP as a reason?
So we can't provide any of the specific search details because those fall under investigatory records that aren't released publicly. And that was what I can do is just explain the steps that I just did behind our review.
So I guess I'm trying to understand how we would be able to verify that the department actually did remove the agency from the list if we don't know what the agency was in the first place.
Yeah, that, like I said, that is definitely Arlo's realm. So I'll have to get with him in order to give you a better answer on that.
I think those are all the questions I had. Are there any other questions? Okay, thanks, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. Go to the next item, which is 8 subcommittee reports.
Okay, as a reminder, because it has been a while, this is the time for subcommittees to report on activity on their meeting schedule, or report of activity and meeting schedule for all subcommittees, possible appointment or reassignment of members to subcommittee, reassignment of liaison tasks in existing established subcommittee, and additional discussion action points. The subcommittees and liaison roles with development, which is included in the agenda. As is our practice, I'll go down the list and we'll move. Starting first with the regulation subcommittee.
We've had approximately 6 regulations negotiation meetings since our last update, since our last PAB meeting. We have 3 more this month. Most of those meetings are internal stakeholder meetings. Some of them are negotiations with the union. And all I can tell you is that we're moving forward, and probably in the not too distant future, there will be some issues taken to council to help resolve differences.
You want to share those?
I've been asked not to.
I have repeatedly asked that we be briefed as a board in closed session, preferably on what exactly the outstanding issues are. So that when we take them to council, that should be presented as unified voice and message from the board.
Yeah.
Is that going to happen or no?
I think that we should strongly urge, especially since well, I would strongly urge that we have such a closed session with the labor negotiator has to be in attendance at that to do the update. So we have to get it on her calendar.
And one of the reasons we're gonna do this a couple of months ago, one of the reasons we decided to hold off was because we hadn't gotten to all of the issues that we expect there to be dispute over. And I think we're finally gonna get there, maybe even this week. We had a meeting today, we have a meeting Friday. So then we'll be able to have a fuller picture of, what the issues are exactly.
Okay, but isn't this sort of tentatively scheduled for council already?
It was, but it was postponed.
Okay, all right. And why do we have to have the labor negotiator present for you guys to update her?
That's an issue for someone else to answer. I don't know whether director, can you articulate why the labor negotiator has to be at our closed session?
It it's related to the Brown Act, and I will defer to the city attorney for fuller response here, but and they're not present here, but we can get that for you, but under the Brown Act, the exemptions that would allow for the closed session conversation, particularly on labor negotiations, required a negotiator to be there, is what we were informed. So that's the plain, quick response.
Maybe we could even have a special meeting just for this, you know, closed session within the next few weeks.
Yes, that would be very good. It would be very, I think those, board member Leftwich and I would be very pleased to be able to fully update everybody.
And could you, provide an update on whether or not we'll be able to put them?
Yes. When it goes to council, is that what you mean? When it goes to council, it sounds like the insider stakeholders, any of them who want to present their position are able to do so. So that would be us. And the other side. Yeah, so that's good.
And just to emphasize, y'all have been working very hard. Last, on this, and
Yes.
even with the last 2 years.
Yes,
And if they, last 2 years,
2
maybe
years.
5 years.
but we have, but it's been, we've had more and more meetings recently since we've a fire has been lit under people to get this going.
And I want to thank you guys as well. I just did a quick search here. I don't think the Brown Act requires legal negotiation in private. So I will, I don't know who's saying that, but I think we should just follow up because I don't think about that.
That's been my position.
That's a what?
That's been my position as well.
Yeah, we've said that all along, but
Okay,
then
and
we,
therefore we can schedule it.
Yeah.
Then we can have the conversation.
well, except we've always gotten the answer that she needs to be there, so
But
I,
we don't need it. We don't need to ask the question. We can schedule the meeting.
Yeah.
The meeting, we're not, we're not going to be subject to criminal penalties, but I think we should just proceed at this point.
In Santa Monica, we're gonna be so. All this. Don't answer that. And yeah, okay.
All right, up next, the policy review subcommittee.
Nothing to report, that's been in complete advance, and then we can work on the regulation.
Okay. Metrics and operations.
I have passed along a draft of our policy manual to the board member Wells as well as the director. I did that, I think now about 6 weeks ago. And so I'm hopeful that we will soon have a draft that we'll be able to share with all of you. So that can be great when that actually happens.
I will have my red line.
Okay. Great.
Thank you for sending. Outreach and engagement,
No updates tonight.
the rest of the coalition.
I have had a follow-up conversation with Deputy Chief Tate on the shorter language that we agreed to on our last meeting. We need to have another follow-up meeting, but I think the road sticking point at this juncture is once that language is approved, we're going to say you could have a standalone policy for comparing to the federal policy.
Okay, just on the record, I think I appreciate and agree with what the deputy chief is saying. And so I don't know procedurally what it would mean to, because you are supposed to be one thing. Exactly. And so I think for the board to have a full discussion of it, I think it should be on our next agenda. So we can actually have a decision made and hopefully we can come to an agreement. Yeah,
That's the problem.
okay. Because right now, we can't really operate in such committee with you, just you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can join us, Chair.
Huh?
You can join, Chair.
We'll be on every seven. Okay,
Then policies and practices on candidate committee.
we have our next meeting on Friday. Moving along with
I'm sorry, what was that?
the encampment, encampment clearance issues.
Yeah,
And also, just sorry, the students at Berkeley Law have been helping us on that, and one of them might be a freedom is meeting with us, and they prepared a presentation. So that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, then moving on to our liaisons, the chair by panel for EIS.
Yeah, I had a good discussion with Marlo. I think that the department has implemented or is very close to implementing the early intervention system. I, have, reiterated our interest in being involved in the policy. And the chief has assured me that once they have an understanding of what the system actually is and how it could be implemented effectively, then we can have a conversation about policy because just as a reminder, some board members weren't here when we had this initiated in the first instance. It really is designed to identify risky behavior before it becomes misconduct. And but the details of how the intervention actually happens, it's an early intervention system, should be written into policy and it should be effective. And so that's why I've been so focused on having an early and it's like an actual policy, because without the policy, we're just spending $200,000 for no reason. And so I really am interested in making sure that this policy is effective and that the processes are transparent and that the public can have confidence that none of this stuff.
Vice Chair Wilson, any updates on that?
No.
And for policy, we can sign any updates program, how we have.
I'll leave that to you because as far as I know, I've submitted recommendations for policy tweaks and I think you asked, I'm looking now for the thing that was in our packet. You asked the department back in, I don't know, April or something like that for feedback on our recommendations and haven't heard anything. Is that correct?
That's correct. We haven't received it, but
And-
I'll definitely follow up
And that particular policy was?
for these year 2020 for Britain, 2025/001, which would be anti-retaliation policy.
That's right. So it was the policy regarding how we could whenever possible, not have an officer who's been complained about by a particular individual to actually do calls for service to by that individual. And I had put forward some policy language and we presented it to the department and haven't heard back. So that's where that sits.
With that chair, the subcommittee liaison reports.
I just want to ask, is the outreach and engagement subcommittee the one that's responsible for communication?
That is us.
Okay, so that's one of our required activities. We haven't done that in some time. And I think that's a problem. So is there a way we could, I haven't seen, is there a stack of them?
Yeah.
Ready for review?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to, because I know you as the particular chair have a lot going on. Should we have just as a one-time measure or practice where we split them up more broadly just to kind of work through them?
I thought we had decided maybe that staff would do an initial cut, right? Didn't we go over this last year because this always happens? And so I thought, and to make recommendations on which commendations would come under which category, because it has to fit within one of the categories, right?
Yeah, we did say that.
I don't remember where we landed. You director? I mean, I remember.
I would need to look at the record. I'm not.
Something we asked. like a table. We got it once, like a table with the various combination criteria. And then staff recommendation.
We can prioritize getting the batch up, please. And we can connect one time with you, once we hear back from that, about
Okay.
their capacity for.
Speaking of that, I think this is something we discussed at our retreat last year. Could we have on our next meeting agenda, picking a date for the retreat rather than waiting?
It is on the agenda.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, just for situational awareness, actually, this is right for this meeting. We got an email from the commission email with the city clerk's office, giving us the date, so that helps us plan the calendar for your regular meetings as well as sort of planning around those.
So we'll be discussing, because that also came up today with us planning our labor negotiations. The negotiator wanted to plan some meetings in January, and I know that that's always tricky because there's Martin Luther King and January, anyway, so it's meeting.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, with that. Let's go to 9A, discussion and action on review of BPD policy 415 immigration law. And contracted vendors with the sanctuary city of Junction. I guess it's my item. We did hear a little bit of an update from Deputy Chief State on this. And just to provide a little bit more background, in the middle of September, there was a county-wide, even area-wide notice that the federal government might be surging immigration enforcement in our area, and there was a lot of official communication from different mayors around the cities about that. And there was also news after that the surge was called off for various reasons. But I appreciate the department's decision to, on an emergency basis, implement these revisions to policy 415, because I do think that it's really important that the department and its officers are aware of the new sanctuary city ordinance, how that impacts their duties, and including what they should and shouldn't do in a specific situation. That being said, this is a very fluid time in our country, and at NACOL we discussed, we had a public conversation, and there were people from Chicago, from Portland, from LA there, who are speaking about specific instances where immigration enforcement is not just enforcing immigration, but they're also engaging in what could be called unlawful criminal behavior. And there was a question about what is the role of local law enforcement in those situations. And there was also questions that were raised about the roles of local police officers in crowd control and traffic control when there is an immigration enforcement operation. And there were also questions about this new anti-mask law, which for me, for the first time, I learned that it only applies to California officers. I don't think that I read the law and saw that in the law.
Except, we don't have any jurisdiction over the federal government.
Well, that's one of the big open debates about this bill, and the proponents of the bill seem to believe that there is a way to enforce it with federal law enforcement agencies, but I think we'll have to see what happens after January 1.
Yes, and I think there's been different representatives from around, including Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, who was talking about the role of law enforcement in enforcing the law against when federal immigration officials officers are engaging in unlawful actions. And so I think it's a conversation that that could be critical here. And we also heard from some members of some organizers during public comment about some clarification that could be needed in the immigration policy. I think the one that stands out to me, and it's what I highlighted in the memo, is that during the meeting, Deputy Chief Tate, the mayor of the Sanctuary City meeting, Deputy Chief Tate mentioned that there would only be an instance when DPD would respond would be in the case of maybe serious bodily injury or life-threatening circumstances. I didn't see that as clearly articulated in the policy. It does say like emergency circumstances or emergency situations, I can't remember the exact language. But there are questions like that are open-ended, and I think could be addressed further, and also the question about reporting and training. I think that those are important as well. So I guess my question for the board is, would the board be interested in hearing testimony from people, law enforcement or civilian oversight, or people on the ground who have been in areas like Los Angeles, Portland, Chicago, in an effort to understand how our policy can best be suited if that situation were to happen here? And does the board think that a special meeting would be appropriate for that, where we'd be able to hear for the community what the department has done to end in specific situations and what it intends to do, and also you know, what additional provisions to be made to this policy with community input?
I definitely think we should do that. If this special meeting would be not only people on the ground in those jurisdictions you mentioned, but also our department, like the chief. Because it's sort of two parts of the same thing, because I totally agree with your recommendations in this memo that you wrote about the remaining questions about their policy. And it really, I think, would be important to have a special meeting about it. And hopefully a lot of members of the community would attend as well. Because that surge was postponed, but I don't think we can be confident going forward. So we need to do this.
I think what's interesting, like, Chief has been very vocal about supporting Berkeley sanctuary city ordinance. The meetings with the mayor's sanctuary city task force are they're closed meetings. They're not meetings where it's open to the public. And so I think, there's a trust building exercise when it comes to the department, when they're able to explain to the public, and at that meeting, there wasn't a presentation on the policy or the public. And I think that would be, an effective trust building exercise as well, but, and also an educational piece for the community, and also a point for us to raise our questions to the department, and also raise concerns about what we've been seeing. There was a situation recently where, I won't get into this, but that's sort of what I was envisioning.
How large is the task force, and who is represented?
There are a lot of people represented. There's 40 organizations and different, including schools, student groups,
Everybody comes to
businesses, the county. Yeah. The chief, the department has been attending recently. And the majority, if not all of the questions, have been directed at the department and how they intend to respond, how they intend to implement. And so that's where this is sort of some of the questions I think are, for example, the mask person. I mean, that was a new piece of information for me. I'm not sure I agree with that. I didn't know. It is an open question about how it would actually play.
What are you envisioning inviting all of the task force members to this special meeting?
In what way? What do you mean by it?
I don't think any of them.
I mean, it would be open to the public. I'm not it wouldn't be a formal invitation to them, but the community would be welcome to attend. I think I'd be more interested in the board hearing testimony on best practice in other jurisdictions, so that we can figure out the best way to crystallize our policy in a way that's effective and clear.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just thinking the end of the year is closing in on us. We're already talking about doing a special meeting with a closed session to discuss the labor negotiations. So I think it's good, but as long as the board is willing to meet that way, we can, I know you wanted to invite folks from Portland and LA. You have to figure out their schedules, but I think it's be very valuable, certainly timely.
It might put it into the new year.
Yeah, the
Yep.
thing that I was thinking about is that we are kind of on a 60-day clock when it comes to providing the formal recommendations on a revised policy and a revised special order. Which started October 24th, I believe, it's in the memo. Which would put it around November or December 24th, and so we do have a gap in our schedule. Our next meeting is the first week of December, I believe. But there's a holiday, so I hear what you're saying. We have some new scheduling, but if I just didn't want to put out a notice out there without consulting and hearing input, that I'm not very any opposition to that. And I think it would be worth it if the community was also. I did want to also use this item as an opportunity to talk about two more things. The first is that, as I mentioned at Deputy Chief Tate, we have a really odd practice of of only hearing from the department besides, Lieutenant Bonaventure, you're here to ask questions. I appreciate that. The Deputy Chief has been the spokesperson for this policy. And I don't know if you feel well equipped to be the person. If you would be welcome to be here at the special meeting, but we just ask that you be, the person who's placed on the department policy. So that would be something to the department side, and require that. But I think in general, it's helpful for the board to be able to hear what the department's thoughts are on policy and ask questions during the item. And that's something that is going to occur.
I know this has come up frequently. Have we thought about just moving the chief's report, not move it later to the agenda and have it coincide with one of the relevant agenda items rather than having it so early in the agenda? I mean, maybe that would help.
Yeah, we'd still contain their comments to. We can consider it. I mean, I don't know if it doesn't serve the purpose, and I don't want to make their really fixing. That's the third thing that I wanted to bring up was, I believe, another item on the council's agenda last meeting was a waiver for the sanctuary city contract with a vendor that is not related to BPD Superior, and I believe they do something about data management. Actually, I don't know what they do directly. But after that was on the council item agenda, I had a conversation with Carla about, well, which contracts with BPD, which vendors have also similarly gotten a waiver from the sanctuary city ordinance, and I think that he's going to get an answer to me on that. I don't think he had that information readily available, but I thought it would be interesting to know. But that's something that I've asked information. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. There's no other comments, thoughts on that. Let's move on to the next item. Discussion action on Berkeley Police Department's annual surveillance technology report. Next me again. I already said in the comments during the question and answer. I don't know if the board had any additional thoughts on this. I think my recommendation in my memo was to request. Oh, sorry, there is one update that I have to provide. The city manager emailed me and said that we can provide him. This is the first point in the memo. With items involving surveillance technology, complaints involving surveillance technology, and that he was not aware of, nor was the chief aware, the department aware of any complaints during the reporting period on that from us, which I found surprising because there were at least 2 complaints involving body camera footage, which is by ordinance designated as surveillance technology. So we're gonna ask them, since he said that they're willing to include that in the action item, we're gonna provide them with that information. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that part in particular. The second piece was on the audit, the ALPR audit.
Well, can I just ask a question on the first piece? This is a question for the director. Is there a process, I can't recall, by which we notify the department every time we receive a complaint? And what's the proper difference in the grade? Or is it only at the conclusion of the, investigation and following board action?
Within the regulations, when we receive a personnel complaint, we have up to 28 days to issue the notice of complaint and allegations. We have, because it triggers a parallel investigation, we have often at times try to get the complaint form itself to the department as soon as possible. And then while we're still assessing jurisdiction and other issues to get them the notice of complaint allegations within 28 days.
So for these two complaints that you're allowed to share, we are confident that we did send them over to the department
Yeah, we send them to the department and
through this process.
to the city manager.
I send them to the department sort of concurrent with them being filed. Lodged with that.
It was after we made our decision that we sent chief.
Okay, but what I'm hearing is we send it to the department prior to that,
They're always sent.
sort of concurrent with receipt of them ourselves.
Is that's right?
Yes.
Well, I think that's what I was hearing. Okay. All right. So I mean, I just think that would be important when we transmit these two, that we provide some chronology of when they were actually originally sent to the department. Okay.
So. I see, okay. We were notified. After, the department was notified in one instance and before I can get it. It's current now. Anyway, they were notified.
Okay.
But we can provide the information to the board and. It's in the record. There's like some confidentiality issues with like. What level of detail we can get into, but we can get into the same details of the department if we need to available. The other issue that I raised in this memo is about the ALPR audit. And I in particular was not impressed with the description and the specificity and also the conclusion that the audit drew. I wanted to flag that to the board because this is the audit process that we recommended and that council actually adopted, we implement for the surveillance technology. And one thing that the council mentioned at that meeting was we will still need to evaluate the sufficiency of this audit process to ensure that it's meeting its purpose. And after I reviewed these findings, I didn't find that so sufficient. I didn't find the conclusion compelling at all that ICE didn't refer to the agency that is ICE that is commonly referred to as ICE. And I also, as I mentioned, I'm not sure how we would be able to even verify that the department is taking the actions that they say they're taking if we don't have the data, if we don't have the understanding of which agencies are of misusing Berkeley's data. So my recommendation is that the board sort of adopts, draft a letter to council that flags this audit and also recommends that the department put into its own policy the remedial actions that are identified. Unfortunately, we don't have a draft letter ready to go, but if anyone has comments on what a potential letter could include or not include, I think this would be a good time to discuss those so that it could be ready to go. And just for additional procedural content, the department is still considering whether to contract with plot for surveillance cameras. So I think that there is still an opportunity to weigh in this process.
I'm just looking for the actual surveillance report.
Yeah, it's on page 48.
The supplemental.
No. Yeah.
Okay, no, I haven't. Because I'm looking for the date that this is going to council
November 10th.
on 5 days. So this letter would be sent before November 10th.
It doesn't have to go to council for this item. It could go to council when the law item comes before council.
Mm.
So I think there's different opportunities to come with it.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we could like sort of like authorize a letter that, but that's kind of like tricky. I don't know if the board is interested in raising for council ordinance this ALPR audit pending. I think that the council will probably identify themselves, but you know, it might also be incumbent on us to say something before the council meeting.
And you have the basic outlines of a letter here already, what you presented to us.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, the information is here.
That's true if the board agrees with it. I went out, I didn't go out on a limb. I was very conscious of the wording that I was using in the letter when I said that the department was less than forthcoming. Because I really wanted to clarify when the department identified the potential breach, and you know, they explained that it was before they presented to council. So I was like, why? I asked them, like, why didn't you think that was relevant to bring up? And they said we were focused on surveillance cameras, not ALPRs. And I'm like, we were discussing the law, and you know, that's kind of where the conversation can be. So I do think it's relevant. I think the council should be aware of the board is paying attention.
And it reminds me, I don't see it here. Don't remember reading it previously. Did the audit, the process that initiated this audit protocol, did it indicate, or does it require the board to be given the results of the audit affirmatively, or what does it say?
Yes, it does. And that was another issue, but you know, the chief explained to me. But let me just back up. It does require it. We didn't get it until after it was published in the public agenda of the council. But the chief sent it to us later and explained that, you know, things were really hectic with September and the immigration enforcement. So I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But we are required to be notified at the same time as council.
Okay, but this is the first time council is being notified as well
Of this item.
in the item,
Yeah.
so we are being notified. I guess we weren't notified, we just saw it in the item.
Right.
Okay. So I think that any letter should address that,
Okay.
because I'm this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to go on and on about it, it should go.
Okay.
Otherwise, I agree, just repurpose this.
Okay.
I mean, I think the letter is written.
Chair, what's going to be covered on November 10th?
This report is on yet for the council.
Well, why do you say we have more time to get a letter?
The best presentation would be for us to send it before November 10th for their action calendar. The next best opportunity would be when council considers law. I don't know when they're gonna do that. It could be never. Like, it could just stay out, you know, but that's theoretically some people. But I think the best opportunity is November.
But we're past some kind of deadline to get it.
I don't think so. We can still. I don't know if it'll be in the. I don't know if it'll be in the record,
Mhm.
but it will get.
So the purpose of getting into the 10th is, council, while you're considering the report, please note a couple things. The reference audit was not provided to the PAB in a manner that aligns with the policies directing council to champion PAB. And then more importantly, substantively, the audit has highlighted the following discrepancies or access violation, right?
Well, they didn't even identify a violation.
Yeah, whatever it did. And we think this information is highly relevant to future consideration of any contract with law. But that's really what we are focused on, right? Yeah. And so that's why we also think we can send this letter later. But I just think to make that really clear. So, yeah.
Are there any comments? No comments on that?
I move that such a letter be written by our chair and sent to council as at his discretion, whether it should get in before the 10th or at the next opportunity. It might be even better than to consider a plot. I don't know. Because I've not been inside this particular issue enough.
I'll second that. It'll, just for the boards, we have to include the 3 points that. Vice Wilson.
So on the motion for the chair to draft a letter to council regarding this topic, just my own meeting. After the next opportunity of expression, moved by Porter Calvillo, second by Chair Porter Calvillo.
Could I make a friendly amendment to that? It's too late. I just would like the letter to also be not just a procedural letter, you didn't do this or that in terms of giving the PAB and so forth, but also make it clear that we would be opposed to contracting with law.
Right, we sent that in another letter.
No, I know.
We can reference it.
Repeat it. Yeah. And so, yes, I agree.
Porter Calvillo,
Yes.
Porter Wolf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson.
Yeah.
And Chair Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, let's go to, thank you all for that discussion. Let's go to 9C, discussion action regarding update on DPD's radio encryption requests, which was approved on the October 28th Berkeley City Council regular meeting. Director.
Beyond the initial conversation that we had, I just want to make sure I provide any additional input not already mentioned. Is there a particular way you want to structure this conversation, Chair?
Just like what next steps we could possibly take with this. I mean, that's sort of like what I'm hoping we could help us with.
Sure. Anna Murillo, do you want to take the lead and then I'll fill in gaps or?
Sure. Just for members of the public, this memo regarding this item was published on the supplemental package. It's on page 88. Regarding the next steps for the board, really it's within the board's authority on section 381 and 17A that the board may self-initiate a policy on the topic if the board wants to further opine on the matter of encryption, do more thorough analysis. As I believe, and I'll let somebody else correct me, but I believe the radio is actually becoming encrypted tomorrow at 5 a.m. That's what the referring was earlier during this meeting. But that doesn't necessarily stop the board from commenting on any policy, practice, or procedure that they may wish to do so. Part of our memo, the recommendation is because of the large community interest that there is on this topic. We would recommend that the board does in the review. We give a variety of options how that's done. But I'll pass it on to the director there as the rest of the memo goes with an update as to what happened between the last time the board discussed it. In our initial memo, I gave background of the preliminary review of the alternatives and downsides or benefits to radio encryption. So I'll pass it on to the.
Yeah, and I think we stated and went on the record even with the letter that it was just a little confusing what the process and procedure on this particular item. It has significant consequence to public safety and sort of bypassed the review of this body. And again, we received conflicting information that there wasn't going to be that move. And then I actually received a call on the day of the Agenda and Rules Committee to inform me that it was going to be introduced on consent item. So there was no real opportunity for us to engage with council meaningfully. And I would like the board to, in addition to the letter that the chair and I sent, to have some sort of conversation about what the expectations are from council about these sort of public safety events that may not neatly fit within the ordinances or the charter, but what the expectation is, just because of the public interest.
I just had a question about encryption. My recollection is that when we discussed this before, in the definition page for the chief had said something like there are different channels, and I haven't focused on it, so I don't know how it works. But I thought they were talking about maybe encrypting one of them, but keeping one open. Is that the case? Yeah.
Yes, currently we have different channels that are encrypted, but channels 1 and 2 are unencrypted, which are the main radio channels that we get.
And what are the different channels? How many are there, and how are they different?
We have, well, there's several different channels. The encrypted channel 3 is a channel where we would contact dispatch to get personal information and so forth. And that's the main channel for encryption.
And what's the purpose of the other channels?
The other channels are tactical purposes.
For channels 1 and
Tactical purposes.
channels 1 and 2, you say are not to be encrypted?
No, they will be encrypted. They are
Oh.
not encrypted. They will be encrypted tomorrow at 5 a.m.
I see.
Channel 1 is our main channel that everything goes out on.
Okay, I just thought I heard the corporate deputy chief to say that the plan was to encrypt,
No,
to not encrypt all of them, but
that was like our conversation in September about what they
right.
do, and there was a conversation about whether both people or encrypt more but not totally.
Right.
But now they decided.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question. The deputy chief Tate suggested that, part of the reasoning for enforcement encryption approach is because of a police operation of safety. Are those instances documented? I don't know if it's documented in the report, but I can tell you, as recently as within a week, we had an individual conducting a crime spree here who was monitoring our radio channels. And we were the only city around who had a radio that he could monitor and know where. But is he monitoring the radio to evade and avoid, or to? I'm not sure on that point, but one of the major concerns is that we would be the only city in the greater, in this area, that would have an open channel, which would lead us vulnerable to individuals who want to commit crime. And they'd be able to come here and monitor everything that we're doing.
I have a question about the concern too, like what, I assume that there were safety measures that your officers were taking while they were unencrypted to prevent that sort of danger to officers, or to prevent the risk of suspects taking advantage of that. So what were some of the measures that were put in place when the radio was unencrypted?
We didn't really have many options as the channels were open. And for officer safety reasons, switching channels to a channel that may be encrypted, it's actually harder to do logistically than it sounds, because you're trying to get everybody on the same page. Not everybody would be able to monitor that channel at the same time. So if something were to happen, others would be hurt. So essentially you have to have the whole city switch a channel. And that's just not feasible. We have to be able to monitor channel 1. So
What information would you share on unencrypted people that's affected by helpful to their?
they'd hear everything that we talk about.
Yeah, I guess like, when I hear officers talk, like I know they're talking about they're talking, so like I'm just trying to figure out how to sort of what that would be.
They could hear the crime, they could hear the description of people, car descriptions, license plate descriptions, addresses, anything that goes over that channel. General public.
I'm having a hard time understanding, so. How is officer safety implicated in this? I don't understand, so they can hear what's going on. They can hear police activity. And so then what?
Because it can have countermeasures to any type of response that we have. So if they're doing something in our city, and we're gonna go respond, they're hearing us. And they know where we're coming from. An officer may put it over the radio, I'm approaching from this area. They know exactly where we're coming from and how we're approaching, our tactics. We're doing a block search, and we're trying to find somebody. Our location would be put out. We gotta tell everybody, okay, I'm at this intersection, you're at this intersection, we're gonna move in through this address. So they're gonna hear that, they're gonna know exactly where we're at and where we're coming from.
And I didn't understand, Deputy Chief Tate talking about Contra Costa is encrypted, Alameda County is encrypted. And so that would make us a target. What is mean by that?
Well, people who want to go out and do crime are going to, some sophisticated types, even unsophisticated, are monitoring via an app. And they can hear what the police are doing. And so if we are the only agency open for everybody to hear what we're doing, they can anticipate where we're at, what we're doing, and then react upon that, right? So if other agencies, they don't know where the police are, they don't know if they're dealing with a critical incident at the time, and their officers are depleted, they don't know any of that. But they would know that here. They would know that, hey, all the officers are dealing with a vehicle collision on this side of the city. Let's go here.
So how long have Contra Costa and Alameda County been encrypted?
I can't speak on Contra Costa, but I know just recently, within the last few months, several agencies went to full encryption.
I'm not sure what our discussion right now, if we're deciding if we're gonna do something and what this something is, I would just share from my perspective. I don't think substantively I have as strong as a negative reaction as some others do to the department's decision to move to encrypted communication. I understand it. I understand where the county is going. That's where law enforcement in the state is going. I think process-wise, it's extremely problematic because less than 2 months ago, we had the chief coming here, or it was deputy chief saying there was no intention to move to encrypted communication, and then we have a closed that consent item saying we're going to transition to encrypted communication. So the process is very problematic. It does not engender trust. So that's what I would say. I don't think at this point, I personally don't support like further engagement on the substantive question of whether or not we should do it. But the process issue is important because it's coming up repeatedly, just like with this ALPR audit that we weren't really told about, and we're like having to go find things out. That's what's problematic. So I would just share from my perspective, that's how I'm feeling about this encrypted issue, if that's helpful to kind of advance the issue.
I think I share your feelings about that.
I share the feelings too, but I mean, I was asking questions to understand, to get a better understanding of why there such a short, quick change to begin with.
It doesn't make sense, frankly, because of the idea that this is a problem that puts officers in danger. There's no rational way that I can understand that it only just came up in the last 2 months.
No urgency.
Obviously, it's been an issue and it will continue to be an issue. But again, to me, it's just like finding a reason to make this transition palatable. But yet again, where I stand is I'm not so like philosophically opposed to encrypted police communication. So therefore, I'm kind of saying I'm okay with the policy outcome, but the process to me was problematic, and I don't necessarily buy this, like, all of a sudden, we're super concerned about officer safety, or we're gonna become a target, like, it's hard to, sort of take that at face
The
value, but
process also leads to substantive discussions because, I'm asking very basic questions about how these channels work. So if we've been given more notice, who knows, maybe we would have had objection if we knew more about it.
Yeah.
But the way it came down, just done last minute without appropriate notice.
Yeah, I think.
So we're meant to decide on a course of action tonight? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, yeah, that's what the recommendation is. It's, there, I forget which page it's on.
It's on page 90. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
list of possible recommendations.
Before we talk about the course of action, I agree with Vice Chair Wilson about, the process here. I was very disappointed to find out about this item through the consent calendar after, being told at a meeting publicly where the department is at. And I have been, I don't want to say I've been begging, I've been, asking very fervently for the department to share collaboratively its decisions to make policy changes so that the board can weigh in before the change is decided on by council, because it's so difficult. Like the council said at their meeting, well, the board can weigh in after the fact. I'm like, okay, we're gonna move to encryption tomorrow, and we're then gonna make a recommendation for the bill. Like it's really silly. So I think like process wise, our charter says that we technically do not have to, that the chief has 30 days to provide us with a policy change or a new policy. And I think like we've seen that doesn't work for transparency and accountability. But I think it should be the opposite, that she should submit it to us 30 days before a policy is implemented, so that we have the opportunity, that the public has the opportunity to provide comment before it's.
And that's the way it was with the PRC.
Yes.
We always had advance notice and opportunity
Yeah.
to provide input.
And I think that we see the benefits of that in other areas where we've had an impact, because there are ordinances that require our review prior to it being presented to council, like the surveillance technology, that policy change. And there the council was able to consider very clearly, like, here's the PAB recommendations that are alongside DPD's recommendations. We're gonna take some of this one. And that just like simply wasn't able to happen here because of the way the policy played out. That being said, like, I think like the council has made very clear where they stand on this. I don't think we're gonna know the effects of the department, sort of like the department. I don't know what kind of ownership we want to speak to what the department plans on doing in terms of the transparency hub, and like there was the chief talked about like items that are going to be put on there in light of the encryption that's coming. Did you have any additional comments?
Yeah, so I just got a glimpse of it today.
Okay.
And it shows our calls for service. So you can go on there and you can see, I think there's a few minute delay, but the calls for service are on there. I'm not sure specifically like what kind of specifics are included. All I saw was the actual call for service.
But I think it's fair to say that we won't really know the impact of the changes that are being made until a few months, until we can see how it's working, right? So I think we should revisit how effective at being buying this at being transparent, this like transparency happening, and provide council with an update then, because we're not going to be able to provide them with an update at this month on how that's going. So that's my recommendation.
I'm fine with it if you think we're gonna be able to do that.
No, it's 6 months.
Yeah, but like I don't have a baseline to compare the transparency hub to, because I've never listened in on the channel. So it's like how I wouldn't be in a position to say, oh, yes, the transparency hub is totally, replicating the information that I got when I was listening in.
No.
Like if we wanted to do a survey or engage people that have been active listeners, and then have them take a look at the transparency hub and give some feedback, that might be an approach that we want to take.
The thing is, they're totally different things. The Transparency Hub gives you data after the fact as to how many crimes have occurred, how many stops and so forth. The encryption makes it impossible for people in the public interested in watching police activity. It makes that impossible.
Yeah.
Number one, those kind of people that want to watch the police in action, as well as the press. I know that Emily Raguso is very opposed to this, but the Transparency Hub is a completely different animal. I mean, that's compile statistics after the fact. The encryption makes it impossible to watch police action in real time. And that's why people in the public are opposed to it. And I frankly am also opposed to it for that reason. But it's late, it's happening.
Sure.
Yeah.
The real-time log, it's gonna be on the portal. It's gonna display the incident number, all date and time, call type, call source, progress, priority level, and
Location.
then general location. And it won't share officer locations, witnesses, or victim information. And it will be on a delay.
You know how long the delay is?
It's about 10 minutes.
So I guess one thing I would about is, with the encampments we've had, a lot of people showed up because it was on the scheme on the scanner, sorry, if there's no call for service, would something like that activity be on the Transparency Hub?
Well, if we generated a call.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
Do you generate?
we generate our own calls. So if we generate a call, it will be up there, but you won't get specific information.
Would it be, I'm trying to understand, like, would it be identified? How would it be identified if there was a call generated that it was for that purpose? Would you be able to identify that it was an inconvenience?
Then they're showing up on the screen there.
Right, that's the officer initiated, just for the record.
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Because I think that, that's something that we could provide you that, but it's something that we can do. If that is lost, in the transition, then I think if there is a way for it to show up as police activity, I think that would be important. But we can have something. I think we should return to.
Yeah, I think if we should ask staff to agendize this 6 months from now and 6 months into 2026. And not then maybe at our planning session, we can talk about the process for actually getting some feedback on how the change is working or how we receive it.
And I think, I will ask about the incandescent transparency part separately from the listening, just to make sure that we have, you can have a conversation about that.
Okay.
And do we want to raise the process issue? Or is it water under the bridge at this point?
I think it should.
I agree. I think it should be right. I think this just feels like an ongoing pattern of opaqueness that undermines the public trust and further minimizes our authority of the person.
Yeah, I agree.
So perhaps a letter just addressed to the process issue, just a one pager.
But including in that, I would really bring up, I think, the trade-offs. I think there are significant trade-offs of having a fully and appropriate police scan.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to make a to agree with any substantive without having the ability to. But, I think there are.
And maybe you say because of the lack of notice, we were deprived of the opportunity to have a meaningful dialogue about substantive about the issue in a timely way.
Yeah, I guess the council sort of inherently pushed back implicitly, but I don't say, you know, the board's not brilliant, so I don't know what your thoughts on that, you know, that's kind of what they said at the end.
Well, I guess what I think is that we only have so much bandwidth. I think we're doing a lot. And so, weighing in retroactively on a decision they've already made for no real purpose, because I don't think they're gonna change their mind. I don't know that that's a big use of, time or energy, frankly. I think it's fine to say there are trade-offs. We certainly heard a lot of people expressing concern about moving to encryption. So we can share that we got a lot of public comment to that end. We can provide the public comment, but I think we more effectively speak to the process concerns in a very succinct manner.
I guess like process wise, we all probably need to see the letter before it goes out, and we could introduce it at the next meeting if we have a special meeting.
We have to do the, and I'm just wondering, when can we just delegate?
You can't delegate it, it's, I don't know if it's like a best practice, but it, you know, we think that it's weird.
I mean, rather than defer it, I personally would be fine with just delegating that authority to you to draft the letter, you know, along the lines we discussed.
I would too, we're very open to that.
Yeah, usually with some content, but I think, if we are able to make a motion where we, explain the points that are going to be in the letter, then I would feel comfortable doing that, but not just like, you know, have the chair or the address identify those points that we don't.
I thought we just have been doing that.
Yeah, I'm saying the
Okay.
motion.
I'll make a
Oh, I
motion.
see.
So
Okay.
I make a motion that we delegate to the chair the authority to draft a letter to council regarding the BPD's transition to encrypted communication. The letter should cover one, process concerns discussed by the board at its meeting on November 5th, namely the fact that the Department of State in September told us they have no intention to transition to encrypted communication, and then there was a consent item moving to encrypted communication. Two, the letter could also raise that the board did hear a number of concerns expressed by the community about the transition to encrypted communication. Several board members themselves have expressed concern. And the council should be aware that there are concerns substantively about the loss of the ability to track in real time the activity, and that we've discussed following up on these issues in 2023.
Only friendly amendment I would make to that is just that my recollection is perhaps a little different. My recollection with the department said they were considering it, but that the one option would be to encrypt some of it and not encrypt. I don't think, my recollection isn't that they said at that point, we have no intention of doing this. I thought they said we were considering it, but one option would be to partially.
You can cite the specific language.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's recorded.
Yeah. You have a motion?
I'll second that.
But on the motion to delegate the authority to the chair to draft the letter regarding the BP transition from the system, which includes the contents discussed at the November 5th meeting, mainly on communications on the transition, 2, to raise the number of concerns about the community members. And 3, that the board will follow up in 2026. Looking what's fitting, but motion by Vice Chair Wilson, seconded by Lutwidge. Border Calvita,
Yes.
Border Lutwidge,
Yes.
Border Wilks,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson,
Yes.
and Chair Kite.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, let's go to 9B, discussion and action regarding the proposed review of alternative vendors and technologies for plot safety. I put this item on the agenda because theoretically, we recommend, we did recommend that EPD not contract with block. And there have been, updates since then. But theoretically, we should also be helping or making a recommendation on vendors that EPD could contract with instead. And so my short and sweet recommendation to this board is that we ask the director and staff to identify alternative vendors for EPD for the use of fixed surveillance external noise, which I understand they may have already started on initially. That's right. I don't want to make a motion with it before there's any discussion, but it would be a motion later on. Is there any other comments from the board on that particular or the staff? I mean, director, if we have any comments, you're welcome to make on that as well. I don't want to volunteer you for things like.
No, we're happy to do that. That was actually one of the initial remarks when I was making public comments at the council meetings, that I was concerned we were prematurely committing the city to FLOP before we even went through this process. And now that we have all the news articles that come out and how the FLOP is being used, it doesn't seem like the vetting was done as thoroughly as it could have been. So I think we're back to the place where we should look at other vendors. So we're happy to support.
Yeah, good. Any comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'll make a motion that the board ask the director to identify proposed alternative vendors for Berkeley's police departments, fixed external surveillance cameras, in light of council's slot. Okay.
Okay. Roll call, Border Calvita,
Yes.
Border Lutwidge,
Yes.
Border Wilks,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Wilson,
Yeah.
and Chair Kite.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Yeah, let's go to 9E, discussion and action on follow-up to positive proposal considered by the city council at their September 30th regular meeting of items 17 and 18. The reason I put this on the agenda, and I'm going to give the floor to the director soon, is that the council during their discussion of these items, made a couple comments that suggested that the board didn't support the items when in fact we had voted, for item 18. And so one of my recommendations is that we, send a follow-up, explain that we did support item 18 because that wasn't made clear at the council meeting. But also there was just like a comment about how our presence, our non-presence at the council meeting suggested that we didn't support it, and I, explained very kindly to one of the staff members afterwards that we're volunteers who, are, not able to be at every single meeting. But the director was there and would speak more to what actually happened and his additional thoughts.
Sure, and I just take a step back quickly, that I think this is where it's important to have metrics and understandings of what the purpose is of me as a director, me and us as an office. There's charter language about what we do. There's also a position description. There's also a proposed evaluation plan that had been provided to council. So within those different documents, it is my understanding that our role is to bring forth to council, city manager, the PAB, and the public at large recommendations that we believe can improve public safety and community relations with the police. And in doing that, we authored a companion report. And the companion report, when the PAB presented their tech scandal report, our companion report went along with it, but it wasn't really reviewed at both the public safety or the full council. And I asked about clarity, was it actually reviewed? And it was almost met with silence. We believe that these two recommendations for that companion report deserved council consideration. So we brought it back to you, this body, on its way to full council. I alerted the mayor that ahead of the agendas in the board committee that I was going to utilize a feature within the council procedure system to take this to full council should the agenda rules committee decide to send it to a committee. The reason I indicated that was because it had already gone through various rounds of review and it hadn't been taken up for vote. At the agenda rules committee, I was asked to consider withdrawing and or they contemplated sending it to a committee. So I utilized that authority under the council procedures to request that it be placed on the council agenda. So it goes to the September 30th agenda. I present the items. There is questions about the PAB. I didn't, perhaps it was also my fault that I didn't have immediately the response in my recollection that the PAB did support one item and was silent on the other. Notwithstanding, though, I think that the system allows for the PAB to have their own reports and for the office to have their own reports. So I was a little surprised that became a sort of an issue, and even the commentary that, well, your own PAB members aren't here. You didn't lobby well enough for this to even be considered by us. So it was almost weaponized against us in a way that I hadn't expected. So I think, to me, it also goes to the vice chair's commentary on process. Just to compare it to the encryption item, that wasn't met with the same sort of opposition that the agenda rules committee was allowed to go straight into consent, where ours was like, no, like send it to committee. That being said, I did feel some, I think, important questions about these two items. One that I appreciated was the concern about the language on investigative assistance. And I do note that was probably, and I noted on the record that could potentially be misleading because we're not necessarily asking for the Attorney General to send investigators to us. What I meant by investigative assistance is that oftentimes our investigations get caught up in legalities and different legal interpretations about what PAB requires, what different codes require. So that's what I meant by investigative assistance, really legal opinions, access to them. And I provided on the record examples of some that have dealt with policing or public safety matters. Councilmember Blackaby, which is your former board member, did ask some questions, and I thought very thoughtful, thorough questions about this item. He still was not convinced at the time that it was something that he could support. But if there was a concern about the language, that could have also been amended from the dais, which they do all the time. The other item, the communications policy, that received a little bit more consideration, and in actual council action to send it to the city attorney and the city manager for a memo. So I'm not sure they gave him a deadline, but that is in essence what happened at that meeting during that discussion.
Any questions for the director?
What are you asking us to do?
Nothing. There was just like, nothing necessarily.
Just information.
I wanted us to, in light of, the commentary of the council, to have an opportunity to talk about if there was. Yeah, this is more on the specific recommendations.
Let me comment. I think this raises issues in the charter about ambiguity in the charter about the distinction between our two bodies. You know, you have the board and you have the office of the director. And there's some overlap and there's some connection, but there's also some autonomy for each. And I think maybe that's something during our planning session we could discuss. I don't know, flushing that out better. And someday, in an ideal world, the charter would be amended because there are a lot of problems with it. But I think that's one area. And it sounds like council was kind of thinking of us as one entity and not recognizing that you are a distinct entity. And as you said, you have the ability and the right to make your own reports and recommendations to council. Sounds like they didn't understand that.
Is there any interest in correcting the record with council on, I don't know, it's probably too late, saying it might simply seem like a little bit, nitpicky, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they appreciate us bringing up things that were,
Well, we're already going to be communicating with them on several things, right?
Okay, yeah, you're right. Director, is there anything that you want the board to take notice of, like?
Quick comment that there was a NACO session that did talk about timing. When is it the right time to bring something up, or if something goes stale? And I think there's a good conversation about that. And the other thing, I think there is an opportunity beyond like process sentiments to really have a broader discussion. This probably for the retreat. Is there a way to amend outside of the charter the procedures in place, and perhaps insert some language when there's a public safety item, back to the encryption, how does the body get engaged in that level? And there might be ways to modify processes that we have in the either the commissioner's manual or the council procedures where the body can be uplifted in the way I think the charter requires it to. So that, again, broader discussions, but that's something I would like to come out of.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to flag for the board is that at the last council meeting, one of the council members made a comment that charter officers do have the ability to put items on the action calendar and calendar in general, and that are directed at the charter officer. Although, you know, there's some correction with how that's used. But there's an ambiguity with, like you're mentioning, board member Lethbridge, our distinction between our bodies. And we are a charter body, of which the director is a secretary of that body. And it's a position that we haven't taken, but it's possible that within that framework, we also have the ability to put items on the action calendar of council, because we're a charter body, you know, with the secretary, with the charter officer. Something we haven't done. It would be a break in process, I would say, but it's something that I was considering when it comes to the regulations discussion with things like really breakdown. You know, there's the director and the board are both parties to that discussion. It's possible if we just don't get any momentum, if that's an option. That's just all I wanted to raise for this discussion. Okay, it doesn't sound like there's any action to, unless there's any objection, I'm going to move on to the next item. Okay, let's go to 9F, the section action on fiscal year 2027 biannual budget development.
I'll tap into our policy analyst. You want to summarize where we are on this?
Yeah. So the board in the previous year has defined on the budget for the BPD. This year, the budget instruction of the budget cycle for the next biannual budget actually came early. It's usually given to us around January, this year's given to us in October, for various reasons, including sort of the state of the deficit that the city's predicting on having. So we're bringing this item to your attention in case the board would like to, and we recommend that the board do establish some sort of subcommittee or review it as a whole. We want to give you these instructors, this overview of the process, so that the board can start planning. Should it take on this review, the process for and how the budget for the next biennial cycle will be broken down, and what recommendations that will be presented on the That's sort of a quick overview of it. This is in reference to the memo each coming month. We'll happily take any questions after the director. In case there's any comments from the director.
I would just say that, being a few months into this hiring freeze, it has caused serious strain to the office. And I know it was wondered by, in our offices, sort of a big freeze during my tenure when we made the case for parity with internal affairs, and we don't currently have two investigators like they do. I understand comparatively, it might look like our jurisdiction doesn't receive a lot of complaints compared to other jurisdictions that are bigger. However, the level of thoroughness that our office does when we do our investigations, especially with body worn camera footage, does require a lot of legwork. And also, with our dual duties as secretaries, we also delegate a lot of work amongst the staff members, and we also don't have an administrative person. So those are two key positions that are really straining our office. And I'm really concerned if we go into this budget conversation and council is not interested in restoring those positions. So I would like some alignment, and I'm happy to make the case in a more formal presentation, because I know in previous iterations, the board has asked, like, what does the staff do and where is the delegation division of labor here? I'm happy to have a full discussion on that, but it's certainly been a strain for us in terms of the investigative side.
Well, I definitely think that with respect to the DPP budget, we should exercise our option and decide to weigh in. And I don't think we need to establish a new subcommittee, because the operations and profit subcommittee is the current form of the former budget and justice. And I think operations subcommittee, I think it would be appropriate for our subcommittee to take on the kind of heavy lifting on budget review. So that's what I would propose there. In working on the policy manual and really carefully looking at our mandatory and discretionary responsibilities, I actually didn't find any of the ways for us to weigh in on the ODPA budget versus our own PAB budget and the BPD budget. So that's one of the questions, director, that's outstanding for you in the version of the manual that I sent you. So that's what I would say there. But certainly with respect to the BPD budget, I think we should affirmatively take that up.
Any other comments? What is the timeline for the budget proposal process, record?
But we, said, do you have it? I think they just gave us a timeline.
Yeah, I'm still honestly reviewing most of the timelines, but there's various layers to it. For example, the city's currently allowed to apply for one aspect of it in current fiscal year, with our adjustments and appropriation. So we'll be happy to share that with the board when we have a more digested form of this multiple page document.
Okay, let's agendize that at our next Sunday meeting.
Okay.
If the information is available with us, but it sounds like the vice chair was saying it's lower at so. Okay, yes.
Just one quick, I think the caveat there, and I hear the vice chairs. The charter does this weird thing where it talks about the board and the staff, and then it conflates that with the office being the sort of staff. So that's where I think it got tricky. I'll respond more fully, but I think that in practice, it has been that the office has been the board staff. But I see two avenues where there was a contemplation of board staff that will presumably be also supervised by the director in that chain of command. But I'll answer more fully, but I just wanted to note that.
Okay.
Any other comments before?
So we have time to put this off to the next meeting. We're not gonna run up against some deadline for this. Jose?
Maybe we can ask him about it. Like, who knows? You know, when the department submits their first proposal to council or to the budget committee. Okay. I think it's in March, based on historic practice.
What do you have time to put up what? I think what I'm recommending, I don't know what you've done on it, is that the BPD budget is used, is conducted by the operations and process committee, and we'll make sure that we can find any time for him.
I second that.
Okay. I didn't know we needed a motion.
I didn't know whether we did or not.
Okay, I don't know to do either.
So, just repeating, but
Move it along.
it's the motion to assign to the metric and operations of the DEP budget,
I think it's called operations and process now.
operation.
Yeah,
I think it's not pushing.
okay, I don't know what it's called.
And that.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. You know it, Mark.
The roll call vote, Board Member
Yes.
Board Member Love,
Yes.
Board Member Wells.
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson
Yes.
and Chair Diacono.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, let's go to item 10, public comment.
Thank you. As a reminder, speakers have been allotted up to 3 minutes, but maybe allotted less time if there are many speakers. If they comment on any matter, then the board just take that time. Except confidential personnel matters. I'll start with those physically present before moving on to our virtual meetings. With that said, would anybody like to provide public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to our virtual attendees. At this time, if you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Again, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to provide public comment. Chair at this time, I see no hand raised.
Let's go to item 11, closed session.
Okay, so we are now going to discussion.
We're back live. Okay, so let's go to agenda item 12, announcement of closed session actions. The board administratively closed 2 complaints and agreed with the director's recommendations on another. And with that, we'll go to adjournment. We'll have nothing to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.